Welcome to another episode in our little sound series. You might notice we're not in the booth anymore. Welcome to Daniel Winkler's drama classroom, because today we are looking at the passport. So what do you do if you do not have a sound system in the room you're in? Well, I'll tell you what you do. You sound engineer, you make one. And this passport will help you. This is a piece of equipment that is entirely designed to house an entire sound system in itself. It's got speakers, it has the amp, and it has all of the cables you would need to connect them. The reason it's called a passport is because it has an entire sound system in here. It's portable. It's like relatively portable. I mean, it's more portable than a normal sound system, so I'll give it that. But this lesson is going to double in teaching you how to set up the passport, also teaching you about all the different types of cables we use, and basically showing you that the passport is a little microcosm for how a sound system works. It's like the basic anatomy. Alright, let's crack this bad boy open. So, first, you're going to take your fingers, put them as hooks, dig them right here, and then pull up. And then, just get rid of the little flaps, and the speakers pull out. We have handles right there. One of them goes on the left, one of them goes on the right. Next up, the passport has a front and a back. This is the front. It looks like an amp. It's got all the knobs that you would need. It's basically like a little mixing console, but we'll actually explain why it's not a mixing console and what the difference is later. And then the back has all of the cables that you need to set it up. It also has places for the speakers to plug in, and power, on and off switch, all that jazz. So let's start with the on and off switch and plugging this bad boy into power. So I have this conveniently placed extension cord. By the way, this is cable number 1 we're going to be talking about today. This is an Edison with a grounding. A grounding. Yeah, sure. A ground. There's the word. We're going to take from the top row, power cable. This is a different kind of Edison that is used with most speaker equipment. Plug it into here. Yeah. And then plug it into our conveniently placed extension cord. Turn it on. And whoa, when you look at the front, a green light appears in the bottom right with power. That means that this bad boy is now on and it has power. Congratulations, you've done step 1. Step 2. You're going to open this bad boy again. Take out your 2 1/4 inches. There's an extra power cable in here in case. And one of them is longer than the other because normally the amp, if you have like a stage setup, the amp doesn't always go in the center. The amp usually goes closer to one side than the other. So the 2 cables connecting the amp itself to the speakers are going to be radically different lengths. So you can see that this one is obviously a lot shorter than this one. This is our second type of cable. This is a 1/4 inch because the diameter, yes, the diameter of this little cylindrical metal tube thing is exactly 1/4 inch. Whoa. You're going to plug this into, this is stage left, so we're plugging it into the left, and then take this and plug it into the only port on the speaker right down here. There you go. Do the exact same thing with the other speaker. Here. Bam. This is a little too close. And now both of our speakers are plugged in. Lovely. Wow, I'm twisting this thing too much. Both of our speakers are plugged in, and we know that it's on, which means that it's time to get an input into this bad boy. Over here, I have the 3rd type of cable that we'll be working with today, and also probably the most important cable in all of sound. This is an XLR. Oh yeah, take a good hard look at that bad boy. This side is the input side with the prongs, and this is the output side with the holes. In some very old-fashioned textbooks and manuals for these, they refer to the input side as the male end and the output as the female one. That's what that means. For obvious reasons, we don't use that terminology anymore, and if you use that terminology, I will find you, and you will know what happens. So this is the input side, this is the output side. Lovely. Also, just using the logic of input and output, you can, I hate to use another math reference, but XLRs are vectors, which means they're directional. Information travels from the input side to the output side. Quarter inches are not vectors. Quarter inches equally share the information going both directions between the two things. You can plug in, quarter inches can work to both connect a amp to a speaker or a guitar to an amp, because it can take both inputs and outputs, because quarter inches are the same on both sides. XLRs are not. XLRs are always directional, unless it's an adapter. But XLRs always have an input and an output, and information travels from the input to the output. We're going to plug in our input into, on the amp. Do you remember how on Barry, all of those little columns were an individual channel? Works the same way here. Each one of these columns is a channel. Notice that some of the channels are different than others. You can only use phantom power, which is this button, which covers these 4 channels, for the first 4 channels, but you can only plug in quarter inches into the last 4 channels. The first 4 can take XLR, the last 4 take quarter inches, and only the last 2 channels can take 1/8 inch. So the first XLR port is broken. I don't know if we have a better password by the time you're watching this video, but if you don't have a better one, don't use this port because it's broken. So plug it into input 2, and take your output and plug it into your generic everyday wired microphone. Oh, before you plug in anything, always make sure you hit the pad button. Pad does the exact same thing as dim for monitor settings on Barry. It just applies a flat 20 decibel quieting to everything going into it. So when I plug in this microphone, hopefully it won't blow out our eardrums. And there we go. Okay, so now how is this working? I am plugging in this microphone and it is going into this XLR. This XLR is taking the information. You can see it coming up on the meter here under output because it is being sent to the output and out to those speakers. If I unpress pad, it gets really loud really quickly. So we're going to take the volume all the way down, turn off pad, and then we're going to slowly bring the volume back up to where it should be. There we go. Now the password is fully set up, you're good to go. If you want to play aux, the pad also serves as basically kind of just like a mute button. We're going to need this cable, the last cable that we're going to be talking about today. That is an 1/8 inch, because the diameter of this little cylindrical rod is an 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 inches are just smaller quarter inches. They're used for small stuff like phones, tiny speakers. They're just smaller quarter inches in every way. You'll plug in this 1/8 inch in either this port or this port, depending on which channel you want, and then you'll plug this into a computer or a phone, and you can play music through it, and it'll show up on that channel. So another fun fact we're going to talk about right now is the way that a microphone and XLRs work is it takes that vibrating disc from the air hitting the disc at the top of the microphone, and that vibrates the disc, which causes an electrical signal to flow through, and that electricity is then turned back into sound by the vibrating disc in the speakers. But because all of those sound waves are turned into electricity first, it means that we can get this thing called interference, which is where, hold on, let me make that a little more apparent. If I touch the end of a cable with something that creates static electricity, then the microphone, or not the microphone, the amp, cannot tell that that isn't supposed to be a sound wave. It thinks that it's a sound wave because it's interference on a sound cable. You're giving it an electrical current, and that electrical current is being produced by the speakers as the sound wave. So there you go. I don't know if you can hear that. Okay, anyways, that's an 1/8 inch. We won't be using that for today, but there you go, now you know what it is. Lovely. So Gus, what if, I like this little microphone we have here, but let's get to that in a little bit actually. I want to first go over the amp itself, and all the different settings on the amp. Top setting is volume. I can turn the volume up and I can turn the volume down. Second setting is, or the second and third settings are EQ. So on EQ on Barry, you can really adjust every single frequency individually. Like you can adjust the highs and the lows and the mids and the high cuts and the low cuts. On your everyday amp, you're only gonna have treble and bass. If you take the EQ graph and you cut it in half, treble is everything past that halfway point, bass is everything below that halfway point. It's more specific than that, but on most everyday amps, it's gonna be like that. If I up the treble, then it's basically just gonna turn up the high frequencies on my voice. You can up the treble even more by turning down the low frequencies, because that's how EQ works. If I turn up the bass and I turn down the treble, then my voice gets a lot deeper because I'm upping the low frequencies. So that's how you do EQ on the Passport, is you just fiddle with these two knobs. This one turns the high frequencies up and down, and this one turns the low frequencies up and down. This bottom one is fun, this is reverb. This reverb is the only effect that this amp can do, but I mean, it's a pretty good one. You can hear that as I talk, you can now hear that reverb effect. Oh yeah. Oh, that's some reverb. If you want to control the reverb even more, the settings for the reverb are up here. So now the reverb lasts longer. And now the reverb is higher pitched. There you go. Reverb settings for controlling reverb are up here. Reverb itself is down here. So now I just turned reverb off. Pad. You know what pad does? I did not mean to press it right then. That scared me. In the bottom here is if you want to connect additional outputs. In the back, you have your two speakers here and here. But if you want to plug in a subwoofer, which is a type of speaker that includes or specializes in low frequencies. Actually, you know what I haven't talked about? Just the anatomy of a speaker. Speakers always have two parts. The top part, which is the tweeter, and the bottom part, which is the subwoofer. The top part, the tweeter, sends out all the high frequencies. Bottom part sends out all the low frequencies. Subwoofers, every speaker has a subwoofer, but a subwoofer itself is a speaker that is just the sub and is super good at making big low frequencies. Yeah, I think that's about it. Also, fun fact, whether sound is omnidirectional or not actually depends on whether the sound wave being produced, whether the wavelength of that sound is larger than the cone that is being produced out of. So because bass frequencies are this big and this cone is only that big, that's bigger, bass frequencies are omnidirectional. High frequencies are super small, so it's going to be smaller than the cone that's producing it, so the high frequencies are not going to be omnidirectional. I'm getting way too into this, but the reason is because the cone, as the sound is being produced, if the wavelength is smaller, the cone is shaped like this, so the sound is going to bounce off of each other and perfectly cancel each other out in every direction except for straight forward if the wavelengths are smaller. If the wavelengths are larger, that canceling out does not happen. That's why sound is sometimes omnidirectional and sometimes not. So there you go, bonus fun fact of the day. Plugging in additional outputs. The difference between a mixing console and an amp. An amp takes a bunch of inputs and has a bunch of outputs, and it sends every input to every output. A mixing console takes a bunch of inputs and a bunch of outputs, and it lets you choose which inputs connect to which outputs. Like, you get to control it. An amp sends everything to everywhere. A mixing console lets you choose. That's the difference. And because this is an amp, if you plug in a sub, all of these channels are going to be sending up the sub. You cannot adjust those. Up here is USB controls. Just like in Barry, plug in a USB, hit record, and it will start recording. Then pause it and take the USB out, and you'll have a recording of everything that goes through the Passport. Lovely. I think that is about it. Oh, there's two types of reverb that you can change between with the select button. The LEDs for the first type don't work. So right now, reverb 1 is being selected. It just doesn't look like it. And then if you select it, it changes to reverb 2. But if you change it back, it's reverb 1. Okay, cool. Time for the fun part. So, I like microphones as much as you, and we all love microphones, but what we don't like is these darn cords, and tripping on cords, and tangling in these cords. And man, life would be so much better if we had a wireless microphone system. Oh wait, we do, and it's called Wanda. But how does Wanda work? I'm so glad you asked, because it is time to set up a wireless microphone system. Right here, right in front of you. So, let's talk about all the pieces we need to make a wireless microphone system work. I just ran up and down a hallway, so my breath is a little out of it at the moment, but okay. So we all know the wireless microphone. It's a big, chunkier version of the standard mic. that has this special bottom part that allows you to connect it to a receiver. Wireless microphones still involve wires. It's just that it moves the wires from connecting the microphone to the amp to the microphone to this special box called a receiver. And the microphone can just do its own thing. So the microphone sends out radio frequencies. Yes, radio frequencies, because the exact same frequencies that radios use. If you try to use a wireless mic while next to a car radio and you play the exact same, if you set the microphone to send out the exact same frequency, you will mess up the car's radio because they are the exact same radio frequencies. If you send out frequencies, then these frequencies will be picked up by an antenna, and the antenna will send the signal to a receiver, and the receiver will send the signal to an amp. And that is how wireless microphones work. Let's set one up. This here is a receiver, magical little box. In the back, it has XLR and power, and also a place to plug in the receiver, which is this metal bit here. I'm going to turn the master all the way down in case I accidentally blow out an eardrum. First up, let's do power. You always do power first. I'm going to plug it into this lovely, conveniently placed extension cord that was always here, and I definitely didn't run and grab it from HNT during the cut. I'm going to take a power cord. This is the weird barrel kind that's mainly just used for really small sound equipment, like I believe DJ mixing things use these. Plug into the power. Shablam. Oh, this little thing here, this little hoop, is specifically for plugging in the power in a way that it gets like locked in there and is much less likely to fall out. Cool, so now this bad boy is power. So I'm gonna turn it around. Oh, this receiver that I'm using right now is an SLX. The reason I'm using it is because it's left over from how we used to do things. All of our receivers now are QLXD, which just means that they're fancier, they glow more, and they look a lot more sexy. These SLXs, they're old, they're dusty, and they're in the top, like they're on the shelf in H19, and I just whipped out one of the old ones we used to use to show you for this lesson. But the QLXDs will still work the same. Hold down on the power button. Once you're connected to power, it will turn on. Once it turns on, it shows you all of its lights for a minute just to test, and then it shows you a group and a channel. That's good. That means that the receiver is ready to send a signal. Next up, we need to give it a place to send a signal to. So we're going to take that XLR from earlier. Remember, input has the prongs, output has the holes. Obviously, this receiver is taking the input, follow the flow of information to understand which side you should be plugging in. The microphone is sending information to the receiver, which is sending information to this. So the receiver is going to have an input, and it needs to send that information to here. Lovely. Okay. Yeah, let's do channel 2. So now, this receiver is ready, it has power, and it has a place to send a signal to, and this amp is ready to receive the power. But this microphone isn't connected just yet, because we still need an antenna. This microphone sends out radio frequencies, but those radio frequencies can only be picked up by a special piece of equipment that looks like this, or it looks like the giant paddle thing you saw during the tour, which is called a paddle antenna. This, I believe, is just called like a wand antenna. So to plug this in, you have to do a fancy little thing where you line up the grooves. Oh, actually, let me show you. Frequency bands. Okay, so frequency bands are a funny little thing where if you take any antenna, any microphone, and any receiver and try to hook them up together, 99% of the time it will not work. You need to do a dumb little thing called making sure the frequency bands match. So for example, this microphone, if you unscrew it and look right there, it says what frequency band it is. 572 to 598 megahertz, which is nicknamed J3. Half of the SLXs we have are H5s, which is the frequency band right above that, no, right below that. But some of them are J3s, which is what we're using right now. That microphone is only going to send out a radio frequency in that band. This antenna also has to be in the same band, 572 to 596. That is J3. This receiver also has to be in the same band. In the bottom right, it says 572 to 596 or J3. All three of those have to match. If you're using an H5, this has to be an H5, this has to be an H5, this has to be an H5. If you're using J3, which we are now, this is J3, this is J3, this is J3. Okay, there we go. All of those have to match or it will not work. You're going to turn this around, put this straight in, and then twist it until it clicks. Bam, there you go. And now you're going to twist this back, point it straight up, and now we have an antenna. We are almost ready. There's still a few more final steps. Take the microphone. This is an SLX microphone, so it doesn't have the easy little switch. You have to hold down on the power button. Shine green for a moment, and now we're ready. And now it shows you on the little microphone screen a group and a channel number. The group number is 2, the channel number is 6. This is 5-3. Oh no! The group number and the channel number don't match. The reason why group and channel numbers exist is if you have multiple receivers and microphones on the same system, aligning the group and the channel is how each receiver knows which microphone it's supposed to be listening for. So in order to connect these, I'm going to unscrew this bad boy and see at the bottom that it has a, I do not believe that's an IR camera, I think that's something else, but it's basically an IR camera. It's the little sync link. And then this receiver also has a sync light with a button, and it's both this dark red color. You're just going to hold up the sync to the sync, and you're just going to press the button. And as you do that, the light on the microphone, I don't know if you can see that, is going to flash orange for a second. That flashing orange means that it worked. So now if you look at the microphone, it doesn't say 2.6 anymore, or whatever it just said, it now says 5.3, because this microphone is now on the same channel as this, and if I start talking into this microphone and turn up the master volume, you can now hear my voice! Yay! Talking into the microphone. Yay, okay, so let's recap. What is happening? How can you hear my voice when there's no cables around this microphone? My voice is hitting a disc in the microphone, which is vibrating, sending an electrical current, which is then being turned into a radio frequency. I'm friggin' NPR, baby. That radio frequency is being picked up by this antenna. This antenna is sending it to this receiver. This receiver is making sure that that frequency is encoded with the same group and channel, the same identifying information as the microphone. And then if that's correct, which it is because these are both 5.3, it then sends that information along this XLR, and that XLR goes into the amp. The amp allows you to change the sound settings, and then the amp sends that information out to the speakers. Yay! There we go. Okay. Last thing. This is the last thing. I know this is going to be a long video. I'm going to turn off the microphone, because what if I don't want to use a wireless microphone? What if I want to use a body pack microphone? These bad boys, this is also an SLX. The QLXDs look a little different. Way hotter in my opinion. The SLXs working basically the exact same way. I need these batteries. Thrilling content, I know. You're going to hold down on the power button at the top. It turns on because it has batteries. But oh no, it says group 6, channel 1 on it. That's so terrible. Actually, I'm going to hold it up. Oh, these bad boys, the sync camera is right there underneath in the battery port. On QLXDs, both the microphones and these, the sync port is like right next to the screen, so you don't need to open the battery port to sync, you can just do it raw. But because these are SLXs, I have to do this. I'm gonna hold it up, press the sync button. This microphone's light is gonna flash red. Oh my god, are these not compatible? Oh my god, they're not compatible. Hey, guess what I was saying earlier about J3s? This microphone is an H5. Yep, wow, look, it says right there on the back, H5. I'm an idiot and grabbed an H5. But let's imagine that I grabbed a J3. This little antenna allows this microphone to send out that signal. So this thing basically has an antenna that's like hidden in the bottom area. This, this is not the microphone part, this is the part that sends out the signal. Even though this is called the microphone, there is not a single actual microphone on this thing. That is where the lavalier comes in. The lavalier is whenever you hear that like somebody's wired, it means that they have a lavalier on. You plug in the lavalier cable into the microphone, always make sure the dot, which you need to press down to unplug it, always make sure the dot is facing straight forward. You're going to take the lavalier, And then the real microphone is all the way at the end of the lavalier right there. And that's because the microphone can go on an actor, and then this can go in their hair, on their lapel, or around their ear. All right. Nope. Okay, there we go. So now, if this worked, if this was a J3 and I synced it right, when I talk into this part of the microphone, it would come out and everything would be working. So just let's all take 5 seconds to imagine that it's working. Whoa! That was so cool. Okay, there we go. That's receiver, wireless microphone equipment, and the past part. Yeah, you learned a lot today. All right, there you go. Catch y'all on the flip side.